Hello there again, Internet. I am back with another video. Today I'm simply going to talk about Street Fighter 6 terminology. I've been meaning to make this for quite a while, so let's just get right into it. Alright, so first things first, let's talk about the buttons. When reading or watching anything related to Street Fighter, you're probably going to hear people say things like short, fierce, or forward. So these are all the terms that the community has given to each button because saying something like, oh, he did light punch into medium kick is time consuming and a mouthful. Okay, so let's start with the punches. Your light punch is referred to as your jab, so that's your quickest one, that is your probably the one that does the least damage, but it is your quickest punch, so that is your jab. Moving on to the next punch is medium punch. This one is referred to as strong. Finally, we move on to your heavy punch. This one may be the trickiest one to remember, but it is called fierce. So heavy is your fierce punch. So if we go left to right on your face buttons, you'll have jab, strong, fierce. Now we'll move on to your kicks. The terminology for kicks are probably going to be a lot harder to grasp because they're much less straightforward than punches, but you'll get it eventually. So let's get right into it. So light kick is referred to as short. Moving on, medium kick is called your forward. This one you probably won't hear much because it can complicate inputs. Like if someone's going to say the directional input of forward, and then they say forward as in referring to the kick, then it gets kind of muddled. So you won't hear this one too much, but it is still very good to know. And finally, your heavy kick is referred to as roundhouse. So if you're new, these are probably going to be pretty complicated to remember, the kicks, that is, because they're not very straightforward in how you remember them. One thing to keep in mind is that these only refer to normals. They do not apply to specials. Specials are simply called light, medium, and heavy. Okay, moving on, so meaties. Meaties are probably the most important term in this whole video. So a meaty is going to sound very complicated at first, but what I'm about to say is literally what a meaty is. A meaty is something that you do off of a knockdown that allows you to hit your opponent the moment the game considers them to be standing. For example, probably the most common meaty that most people that are new will use is meaty throw off of a knockdown. Another meaty you can use is meaty overhead. Really what meaties come down to is what you want to do. You want to throw your opponent so that they can get further into a corner. You want to overhead them so they're forced to do a stand block, or maybe you want to mix them up and get a combo from the overhead. Or do you just want to hit them and make them block so you can keep up pressure? So yes, meaties are very good to know, and having more than one is also very good because if someone gets wise to what you're doing every single time, having multiple will help a lot. Alright, so the next term is pretty self-explanatory, but I will explain the different kinds anyway. So what is a knockdown? A knockdown is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you or your opponent are knocked down. So every single fighting game that you play is gonna have some form of multiple knockdowns, but typically there's only two, and one of them is regular knockdown and the other is hard knockdown, also known as a forced knockdown, but you'll mostly hear people refer to it as a hard knockdown. So the difference between a hard knockdown and a regular knockdown is that the player is allowed to do quick rise and back roll off of regular knockdown, whereas a hard knockdown will force that player to take the longest amount of time to getting back up, which means they're not allowed to do a quick rise and they're not allowed to do a back roll. They are forced into using the longest animation to get back up. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is motion inputs. What is a motion input? Well, it's literally the motion that you use to do a special move. That could be a quarter circle forward, quarter circle backward, half circle, maybe a full circle, all that stuff. And on the topic of motion inputs, I want to talk about a very specific one, and that is DP, otherwise known as Dragon Punch. So Dragon Punch refers to the input of doing a Shoryuken. People say DP or Dragon Punch because it's much easier than saying forward, down, down, forward, punch. That's a little long, so Dragon Punch, much simpler, and you know, it sounds kinda cool. And moving on from Dragon Punch, I want to talk about anti-airs, as Dragon Punches are a very good anti-air. But first, let's talk about what an anti-air is. An anti-air is a move that you use to, well, hit somebody out of the air if they're jumping in on you. This could be a normal, it could be a special anti-air throw, it could be literally anything. They range from being very reliable anti-airs to risky to don't ever use, but that's the gist of it. And why I said Dragon Punch is good is because most Dragon Punch moves, most moves that have the Dragon Punch input, have invincibility from high attacks. And all jump-in attacks are going to be high attacks, so DP all day if you have one. And finally, we're going to move on to our last, technically 2 terms, but they do go hand in hand fairly well. So cross-ups are exclusive to 2D fighting games that have the hold back to block input. A cross-up occurs when a player side switches their opponent and hits them from behind. Typically, a cross-up will happen off of a jump, any jump attack. It is the most common way to do it. Of course, characters like Blanca, for example in this game, he has a special command dash where he can actually cross people up by dashing through them. So there's multiple ways to cross up people, but main gist of it is someone switches sides and hits the other player from behind. And on that topic, we're going to move on to a cross cut. What is a cross cut? So a cross cut, much like a cross up, occurs when a side switch happens, except this is for special moves. So a crosscut is simply just readjusting your motion input because of a side switch. For example, Dragon Punch, which is a forward, down, down, forward input. If someone's in front of me and then they side switch, my input would look like, to me, forward, down, down, back, punch. Because down, back is the new forward direction for me because of the side switch. This also affects other motion inputs such as quarter circle forward, punch, which is level 1 super in Street Fighter 6, almost completely universally. And that is it for this video terms. These are very simple ones, but I think they're probably the most important core things to know. Obviously, some more than others. Definitely learn Meaties. Learn cross-ups and cross-cuts. Those are the big 3. The big 3 you want to learn are those. Now, when it comes to Meaties, every character is different. The universal Meaty is literally just Meaty throw and Meaty overhead. Other characters have some crazy setups, like JP has some. Blanca can do some really nasty Meaties with his rainbow roll. So yeah, it's all about figuring out your character for you and your playstyle and what you want to achieve. Another huge important thing is learning Meaties for quick rise and back roll, because, you know, not everybody is going to stay on the ground and take that super long rise, right? They're going to be doing back rolls and quick rise. And if that happens, you need to adjust your Meaty. For example, if someone gets knocked down and they do a jump and you're going for Meaty throw isn't going to land. So what you have to do is adjust your Meaty so that you can anti-air or do something else entirely. So really, I can't reiterate just how important it is to figuring out your Meaties, because they will change the game for you when it comes to pressure. And with that, I will say thank you so much for watching this video. It means a lot. I really hope that this helped and gave you some ideas and cleared up some confusion. If there's anything you need help with in particular, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. I will try to get back to you as quick as possible, as well as possibly making a video on that concept. If you need help with characters in particular, maybe how to play around something or a special move, definitely suggest that too. I will try to help figure that out with you. And maybe I'll do a video on counterplay or how to play this character or game plans in general. But yeah, that is about it. Thank you so much. Keep playing fighting games.